Welcome. Please all be seated. So welcome to the 22nd commencement of the Global Masterbots program. We have not been in existence 22 years, but as most of you know, since 2005, we have 2 cohorts of GMAP, which accounts for the extra, let's say, would be that about, well, so many classes. Before I introduce the very distinguished people to my right, I'd like to say something about the music. Coming in this morning, I heard David Starkey, who some of you may remember. He was an optional assignment in the leadership class. He's a great student of British leadership. And I heard him on BBC talking about the importance of music to leadership. And I thought about the wonderful music that we have at every one of these commencements. It was a decision we made at the first commencement that we had to have a string quartet, and we found a wonderful string quartet. And I would just like to give this wonderful group of musicians a cheer. Without their music, I don't think we could have that feeling in the bottom of our stomachs, this wonderful feeling today. So I'd like to now take this opportunity to introduce the people on the platform. First, it's indeed a great honor to introduce Mark Mullinex. He's GMAP 11. He was recently appointed First Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. He is our speaker today, and I thank him very much. He's been 7 weeks in the post, but he has come here to speak to you today. Thank you, Mark. His residency was in Buenos Aires, and we had quite a time on 2 buses going out to a barbecue. I think it took us 2.5 hours to get to the barbecue. And we had one bus we called the fun bus, and one bus, I'm not sure what we called it, but Professor Kowalczyk and Mark just said they had the most fun because they spent 2.5 hours discussing what?
Terms of trade.
Terms of trade. Very GMAP. Next, I'd like to introduce Peter Walker, the Rosenberg Professor of Nutrition and Human Security and Director of the Feinstein International Center, who taught the course on humanitarian aid. Larry Crone, Professor of the Practice of International Economics, who taught the course on international macroeconomics. And I'm afraid I'm a bit out of order, but he's already spoken, so I guess it's all right. Karsten Kowalczyk, Associate Professor of International Economics, who taught the course on, yes, of course, international trade. We're also very, very pleased to have 2 members of the Fletcher Board of Advisors joining us today. Elizabeth Parker Powell, Fletcher 62, retired co-founder, chair, and treasurer of Diamond Machining Technology, who is with you at the Hanoi residency and very much wanted to be with you today. And then I'd like to introduce Joyce L. Barsom. She's trustee emerita of Tufts 62, vice president and trustee of the Tavishian Foundation, and also on the board of advisors with Betsy of the Fletcher School. Thank you so much. You might guess that she has a special interest in one of the members of the class. Last night, I introduced the members of our GMAP staff. I said I'm going to find a new name for that staff. I don't think it really exemplifies all that they do. But quickly, I want to introduce Mariana Stoyancheva, our Associate Director. Adeline Wong, Assistant Director of Admissions. Nicole Sanderson, Head of Technology. Ati Waldman in Student Services. Thomas Karyugati in Admissions. And Dan Hurwitz in Technology. Wow, it's hot, isn't it? It's a warm day, but we're going to have a wonderful time and we're going to forget about the heat. The Fletcher School is the oldest professional graduate school of international affairs in the United States. It was founded in 1933. It was a time when the United States had decided not to join the League of Nations just a few years after World War I, and instead made the decision to pursue an isolationist foreign policy. We like to say that the Fletcher School was a beacon of hope in an age of despair. From the beginning, it was defined as being international. When Austin Fletcher, whose picture is right over there outside of Ballou Hall, and you might take a minute when you're having your mimosa to go and look at the plaque dedicated to him. When he left money to this university to found the Fletcher School, the university had the foresight to bring together practitioners and scholars, actually a very idealistic group, from around the country to fashion a curriculum for those entering the fields of international diplomacy and commerce. They came up with a tripartite curriculum that today it still exists. It consists of international politics, history and diplomacy, international law and organization, and international economics and business. Their foresight and brilliance was such that while the courses have changed over the years, and we've added some degrees, and the courses have grown in number dramatically, these three areas continue to be the foundation of everyone's Fletcher education. Fletcher did well, and it became one of the leading, if not as we think, the leading school of its kind in the world. In many ways, it is very surprising that such a school with this long history and a heritage, and shall we say, a bit traditional, would embark on a master's program of this kind. But in another sense, it's not surprising at all. Fletcher has always been distinguished by its openness to innovation, and as we commenced the 21st century, we worked to merge the technologies of that century with the traditional mission of the Fletcher School, to educate the world's leaders from all international affairs professions in an interdisciplinary and all-encompassing curriculum. And we would do this for people all over the world who could not leave their jobs, who were not average age 27, as those who were there during the fall and the spring term are, those who are further along in their careers, and yet they feel this pressing need to understand all the subjects you have undertaken. We did this in a way which I know you can feel it was community-oriented, very, very Fletcher, small and intimate. So you've done this with just a few other people in your cohort. So you've had an opportunity to understand them, to get to know them. And now, lucky you, you get to go out and meet the 700 wonderful GMAP alumni around the world, and the 7,000 Fletcher alumni around the world, and the many Tufts alumni around the world. And I'll tell you, GMAP is everywhere. It's everywhere. You know that from your classmates. You know that because Mark is sitting here in his position. I should just mention Philip Asherman from the class of '04, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Chicago Bridge and Iron, not a small job. Craig Owens from the very first class, who's Chief Administrative Officer and Chief Financial Officer of Campbell Soup. Soon Suon, GMAP 04, is the Cambodian ambassador to the UN in Geneva. Bettina Muscheit has just taken up her position as head of delegation, which is really the ambassador for the EU in Yemen, a brave, brave thing for a woman to do. Pari Javari from the class of July 2012, who is now the Chief Operating Officer of Sesame Street in India. Marvelous, marvelous job. Another, Ryan Evangelista from the March class of 2012, was recently named one of the 40 most influential international development leaders in the Philippines under the age of 40. I could go on and on. Igor Pokaz has just been named the Croatian ambassador to the Russian Federation. Courtney Ratney just stepped from being the ambassador, Jamaica's ambassador to China, to being their ambassador to the UN. And I must tell you about that wonderful, wonderful day when I was in Beijing and Courtney's predecessor as ambassador to Beijing and two other GMAPers, all ambassadors accredited to Beijing, took me out to dinner. And the four of us sat around the table and I thought, my goodness, have we been successful. The GMAP class of 2013 arrived on this campus 49 weeks ago. 49 weeks ago, you came into that Hall of Flags. During this year, there have been many, many happy times, wonderfully happy times. There have been promotions, there have been babies, a lot of babies. But sadly too, some things we wish didn't happen. The loss of parents and family members, friends, illnesses, challenges at work. We have been through a lot. We have all been through a lot. During the mid-year residency, I know you thought we were all playing or all sick, but amidst 50 hours of classes, we took a historical tour of Hanoi. We had visits from numerous prominent speakers, and you should know that the reason we were there, even though we didn't meet them all, was that Hanoi had just named their 3 top foreign policy people from the Fletcher School. So their ambassador, Can you imagine Vietnam's ambassador to the United Nations, to the United States, and the foreign minister were all Fletcher graduates. And they were working to transform, to figure out the new foreign policy of Vietnam. We met the Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam, the Ambassador of the United States to Vietnam, a very, very powerful speaker, the head of the European Union delegation to Vietnam, and the Vice President of the Central Institute for Economic Management. We also found some time to explore Hanoi and to celebrate the achievements and friendships of this class. And of course, we all dealt with the infamous Hanoi horror. And I do notice that I just found out where my bathrobe went. So yes, that was the lovely bathrobe in the Hanoi Metropole Hotel. You can see how beautiful it was. So we were able to have the Hanoi horror. Our experience of the Hanoi horror was in style. Anyway, we witnessed how that experience of Vietnam brought you all together as a class and brought out the best in you, your humility, your caring for each other, your drive, and your determination. This group somehow managed to do all of this while maintaining a rigorous curriculum in international affairs. We call it a 360-degree perspective. These professors and a few others who were there last night teach the essential courses in international affairs: international politics, international economics and finance, negotiation, security studies, international business and economic law, international trade, transnational social issues, leadership and management. These courses form the core of the intellectual capital you will take with you on the rest of your life's journey. You have also, most of you, passed your language examinations. and you have done your thesis. You've done this while you've been in challenging professions, a couple of you ambassadors, and traveling around the world for your jobs. We often ask ourselves, how do you do it? How do you do it? And we know you do it through hard work and intelligence, but there's another ingredient, and we know that they're the people sitting behind you. It's not only you who have sacrificed. Someone said to me that, who is it, that their older son said to their younger son, let Daddy study this year. Let Daddy study this year. And your families, your friends, your partners, even your cats and dogs, I think, have all been with you. So could the class stand up and cheer this wonderful group of people who helped get you through this? How lovely for all of us to finally get to meet you. And we had a good time last night, and over here you see there's a beautiful brunch being prepared, so I'll have more of an opportunity to meet you in a few minutes. So now this class is part of us, and we will miss them dearly, but they won't go away. They will continue to stay in touch with each other, with us, and as I said, with other GMAPers and with the wider Fletcher and Tufts alumni. And we will continue to learn from each other. Many of us will be in Berlin for the alumni reunion there in August, and also for the alumni reunion in October in DC, when Fletcher will celebrate its 80th year. So this class, you have been on a remarkable, remarkable journey. And we have been honored to be on that journey with you. We have been really honored to be on that journey with you. And we hope to stay with you on the rest of your remarkable journey. So now it's time for me to stop talking. So this is the last time you have to listen to me. And we're going to listen to a member of the class. It's a tradition for the class to choose a class speaker. And this class has chose Khaled Mansour as their graduation speaker. He has 25 years of experience in the world of global development, politics, human rights, humanitarian affairs, journalism, and communication. He has worked extensively with civil society, academic, public, and private sector organizations in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and North America as a journalist and as a UN official before he left the World Organization in January 2013 to focus on his writing and on national and regional issues in Egypt and the Middle East, respectively. He has worked on many crises and transitions which have shaped the world as we know it over the past 20 years. As a journalist, he has covered the South African transition in 1994, 1995, and we all should take a minute and think about Mandela, by the way, who just celebrated his 95th birthday, and as we know, he is ill in hospital, and we all wish him well. And he covered the Clinton impeachment of 1999. As a UN official, he worked in Afghanistan in 2000, 2002, including during the US invasion and the toppling of the Taliban. He was in Iraq in 2003 during the US invasion and the demise of Saddam Hussein. He was in Lebanon in 2006 during the Israeli-Hezbollah war, and in Sudan in 2008, 2010, in the lead up to the breakup of the country and the establishment of South Sudan. I guess he knows a little bit in that participation on the boards. He holds degrees in engineering, archaeology, and sociology, and soon to have a degree in international affairs. He has published 2 books, one a book of fiction, and the other a memoir on Afghanistan. He's currently working on his first novel. We hope we're in it. He's married and he has 2 children. And Khaled, you promise to be erudite and funny.
Thank you. Dean Nutter, you made me feel much older than I am. I'm only 27, okay? And this was 20 pages, but looking at your faces, I'm going to make it only 5. So Dean Nutter, members of the Fletcher Board of Advisors, Elizabeth Parker Powell and Joyce Albarsam, Professor Walker, Professor Krohn, and Professor Kowalczyk, our commencement speaker, Mark Molinix. Dear fellow GMAPers, families, and friends, we are all here today, but in a day or two, this group of GMAP graduates will travel back to the four corners of the world. Over the past 12 months, 37 students have come together to study for this degree. We come from 28 countries or nationalities and work in many more. Some of us were born or raised in countries ravaged by war or political upheavals. Some of us still work there. Some GMAP students move comfortably in international power circles, from the boardrooms of mighty and powerful banks and corporations to the upper echelons of international organizations or diplomatic services. Still, some of us work in refugee camps or with very poor and marginalized communities. The great impact of GMAP on this highly eclectic group was not how many people, how many of us were converted from the idealist to the realist approach in understanding or engaging in international politics, or the other way around for that matter. None of us, I believe, was shown the only and true path to understanding and interacting with our world during our studies here. But all of us have become indeed aware of the folly of using one single paradigm to disentangle the complexity of the world we live in. The real gift of the GMAP degree is how we discovered the deficiencies of our long-held beliefs and how we could embrace a multiplicity of approaches and tools to analyze and make sense of world politics, economics, and transnational social movements. This was a gift we had to work hard for. We had to overcome the anxiety we all suffered while trying to read our first balance sheet, or understand derivatives, or disintermediation with Professor Jack. We had to struggle with theories about democratic transition, state formation, and the evolution of Islamic movements with Professor Cellini. We had to think hard about how a business leader or manager should best carry his or her responsibilities in our increasingly multicultural and multinational workplace with Professor Simonin. We had to figure out our partners and how we can get the counterpart to say yes with Professors Chigas and Babbitt. We decided whether a court has jurisdiction over a commercial dispute or not, or which article of which international agreement applies to this case with Professor Trachtman. We had to wonder whether we can continue to enjoy shrimps, for those who eat it, without worrying about the fate of the endangered species of sea turtles with Professor Chester. And we puzzled over how to save the world from imminent security threats with adequate strategies while not sacrificing human rights and the rule of law with Professors Falsgraf and Schultz. We debated definitions of trade. And how developing countries can benefit from free trade and increase the welfare of their citizens with Professor Kowalczyk. And we analyzed livelihood strategies and pondered the future of humanitarian action in disaster and conflict areas with Professor Walker. Then we all, or at least some of us, became more worried about the future value of our retirement funds in light of the challenge facing the international economic system that Professor Krohn told us about. And finally, we took pleasure in grading the mighty and powerful leaders like Mao, Napoleon, and Churchill with Dean Nutter. And through these 12 months of the GMAP program, we have bombarded our professors and each other with nearly 5,500 posts on the blackboard. That's impressive. Now, this group of professors brought us a wealth of academic knowledge and practical expertise. The way they integrated their courses, their nuanced understanding of the subject matter, and their commitment to excellence in teaching and in mentoring helped turn this from a normal educational experience into a transformational one. Thank you, professors. GMAP has a policy that the administration and IT staff members don't fraternize with students. The advantage, obviously, was that we had the opportunity to party hard and late without being watched and without anybody reporting back to Dean Nutter. And that's at least when we were in residence. Parties aside, each and every one of the staff members supported each and every one of us in various ways, in as much as they could. Each of us probably felt that he or she was the favorite student. Dean Nutter, your policy worked much better than you would have ever imagined. I would like to thank Mariana, Adeline, Nicole, Atty, Tom, and Dan. Thank you. I would also like to thank another staff member, or a member of the group that helped us go through these 12 months, who's not here today. That's David Sussman. Because he has the amazing ability of looking at the most disjointed piece of research and then calmly pointing out what was great in it and how it can be saved and reworked to become an acceptable thesis. While GMAP brought us the gift of working with and learning from such a wonderful group of faculty and staff, it provided us with another invaluable asset. It gave us each other. To each other, as GMAPers, we became to each other over time advisors, supporters, compassionate critics, and friends in teamwork and in class, through emails and in Skype calls, and of course all the time on WhatsApp. This diverse and formidable network of friends is something we will take with us and cherish, and hopefully also exploit in good causes when need be. GMAP for us, now that we can look back on these long and difficult months, was not merely about acquiring new tools to help us progress in our current careers. It was ultimately about how to change, how to improve, how to reconfigure our professional and, I dare say, also our personal trajectories. No wonder that some of us have embarked upon or are now considering new career path, relocation to a different part of the world, or other various personal plans. I would like us to steal a line from a major political campaign in this country and say that the ultimate gift we take away with us from GMAP is yes, yes we can. GMAP indeed reintroduced us to ourselves. It revealed the strength that we can deploy and weaknesses that we should accept and then work around. In the words of a classmate who was with us today, he said, GMAP has been a powerful breath of fresh air in my life, teaching me about myself, trusting others, and the confidence to let go, because greatness is to be found closer than we may imagine. I would like to think that we leave here today not only as better educated group of people, but also as more understanding and caring humans, aware of our shortcomings and enriched by our sharpened skills to recognize both the opportunities and the limitations in our reality. We also leave here feeling more appreciative for people around us. We couldn't have done this without the support of families, partners, children, parents, loved ones, colleagues at work, and pets indeed. They have all each in his or her own way contributed to our enterprise and our success. They have been very patient as we sat frowning in front of laptops for hours on end, when we excused ourselves from social engagements didn't appear in a school meeting, asked for another day of leave from our boss, missed the birthday because we had to attend the residency, looked stressed up every Monday, put on a few more pounds of weight, and stopped going to the gym. Sammy, my son who's here, came to be intrigued by the whole experience and finally concluded that his school in New York was much better than Fletcher. In his words, "Daddy, you work all the time while in my school we also play." Sammy and my other son Tamim are here in the audience today together with other GMAPers children. I would like to recognize Austin Mogo Kurika and Savannah Kurika, who are Irene's wonderful children, one of them born during the GMAP year. And the other one has been patiently waiting for his mother to go to the pool with him. And Austin, the time's now, so she's finished. And I would like to recognize also Aaron, Artur, and Lena Avitisian, who from now on can hopefully enjoy more time with Robert. Not only because I worked with UNICEF, I wish I had the time to mention all the names of the children, but I just decided to mention the names of children who are here today, and children which are under 18. So I would like to thank the children again and all the other wonderful kids who couldn't be here today and were not able to join us. I mean, unlike adult family members, some of whom are here with us today, and unlike all other adults in our life, indeed, our children could not maybe understand why and how we are glued to our computers for several hours every day. Why are we back in school? Still, they came to respect and support our efforts in their own way. And I know that a few of us here maybe don't have immediate or long-serving family members, but I can assure you, each one of the GMAP students today has at least 36 new family members, and we're going to enjoy them. I tried to explain to Sammy that it was not all hard work. There was some fun too. What with the beers and bars and restaurants of Davis and Harvard Square? What with the shopping for pearls and silk scarves in Vietnam? The beautiful Beethoven concert some of us attended in Hanoi? The sports events we went to in Boston? And not to mention the fun of wearing bathrobes in public events. Or staying until 6 in the morning, somewhere not far from here, to trick a group of Tufts freshmen and paint the cannon with our GMAP name. And for those who know Tufts and Fletcher, this is not a mean feat. I mean, that was something. It was not all hard work indeed, but there were lots of fun too. So my friend GMAPers, I know that for many of us, now is the time to reclaim control of our lives. The day has come to plan our evenings for leisure, weekend for family, social gatherings, or even reading a book if you like to, a novel, hopefully, and mine, hopefully. Or just slumber on the couch and watch a TV show. And indeed you are entitled to all of this and more. But I would like to think that now also is the time to start paying back. Not only to ourselves, but more important, to our families, to our communities, countries, and I dare say, also to the world. The weekly assignments, term papers, and theses are no more, but bigger challenges will replace them. And we are indeed better prepared to acknowledge and deal with them and to celebrate small and big successes and victories that will be made possible by GMAP. Be that in private sector projects, in public sector policies, the way we see the world, and the ways in which we can change it. I would like to quote excerpts from the poet Constantine Cavafy, a Greek who lived and wrote in Alexandria in the late 19th and early 20th century. In his poem, The Road to Ithaca, which is an imaginary destination, Cavafy talks about a journey similar to what many of us have just embarked upon. As you set out for Ithaca, hope the voyage is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. May there be many a summer morning when with what pleasure, what joy, you come into harbors seen for the first time. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you are destined for, but don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so you are old by the time you reach the island. Wealthy with all you have gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you will have understood by then what these Ithacas mean. My friends, we leave here richer people, and we will never, never, never again be like what we were when we came here 12 months ago. And that is the true and permanent gift GMAP gave each and every one of us. Thank you.
Well, I don't think I have to say anything in praise of the speech. I think the standing ovation from the class says it all. Thank you, Khalid. It's another tradition of the class to give a class gift. As you can guess, many of this class are on scholarship. Not all, but many. And this money comes mainly from our alumni, from other GMAPers. And so this class gift will be going to financial aid for future students. I'd like to ask Julianne Kassem, the class fund agent, to come up to the stage.
Dear Dean Nutter, on behalf of the July GMAP class of 2013, it is with great gratitude that we present our class gift for $20,340.
I guess there's not much more to say than, wow. Thank you. The class will be, shall we say, held together, or the leadership of the class will be, well, Zongo. How can I call him Bernard Zongo? Let's stand up. He has agreed to be the class secretary. We're very grateful that he has agreed to take on this important role for the class, and we expect to see a lot more of him and of you because of his activities. Now, you've already gathered that GMAP classes spend a great deal of time with their faculty, on and offline. So another tradition of ours is to have one of our faculty members here to say goodbye to the class and hello to them as alumni. So we're very grateful that Dr. Peter Walker, has agreed to do this. And I'm going to say a few things about him because I want you to know how distinguished our faculty is. After 25 years of field work in humanitarian crises around the world, Dr. Peter Walker was appointed in September 2002 as the director of the Feinstein International Center at Tufts University. In 2007, he became the Rosenberg Professor of Nutrition and Human Security, and that was through a gift, much like this gift, I should mention, that graduates of Tufts University donated so that that position could be created in honor of a former dean of the nutrition school. Dr. Walker played a major role in managing the relief response to the 1984-85 famine in the Sudan and its subsequent relief and development programs in Ethiopia. He joined the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies in 1990, and in that job, he was involved in needs assessment and evaluation missions in the former Soviet states, in Iran, in Pakistan, in the former Yugoslavia, over the Horn of Africa, Namibia, Malawi, Somalia, and the Great Lakes region. He was instrumental in championing the need to professionalize the disaster response business, developing the Global Code of Conduct for disaster relief workers, and steering the development of the International Sphere Standards, a major NGO and UN collaborative effort to develop universal competence standards in humanitarian assistance. In 1993, he founded the annual World Disasters Report, which has now become a standard reference text in the humanitarian business. Many of you are safer and more effective because of the work he has done. And I must say, my own son, who has worked hard in development activities, is safer and more effective because of the work of Dr. Walker. His recent book with Feinstein Center faculty member Dr. Dan Maxwell, Shaping the Humanitarian World, provides a robust history of humanitarianism linked to an inquiry into its future as a global venture. At the Feinstein International Center, he's actively involved in researching and examining the future global drivers of humanitarian crises, the effectiveness of international humanitarian systems, and the creation of international professional accreditation systems. He's a senior research fellow with the UK DFID, their development agency, and he sits on the board of a number of NGOs and academic journals. He's a dual USA-UK citizen. He was brought up in Northern Ireland, and he has lived all over the world before coming here to Fletcher. Welcome.
Well, how do you follow that? Gosh.
You have to be as good as you sound.
You have to be as good as you sound, right. So I want to start actually with something Debbie's already done. It's nothing to do with you guys in the back. The guys at the back, right? You are the people who need to be congratulated today, because you have put up with these erudite gentlemen and ladies at the front, spending their entire life on their laptops for the last year, not turning up for meals, not being there for the family occasions, not doing vacations, forgetting what day of the week it is, all that stuff. So first of all, for your children, for your partners, for your mothers, your fathers, your friends back there, again, a big round of applause for you. And now to these people in the front. I was thinking, it is amazing how we share experiences. Right? We all come to this GMAP year, and for you, you come in and then you go off. For us, we see another batch of students and another batch. So we share, but we see it differently. We share some things, and we've mentioned bathrobes and photographs, and we won't go there. But every year, and I think I speak for all the faculty in this, we are bowled over by the quality of the students that come here. It's one of the most exciting degrees to teach on. It seriously is, because the diversity you bring, the backgrounds that you come from, you just don't get that in any other cohort of students. We learn far more from you than from other batches of students. Because you bring these new insights, you help us see things differently, right? You help us realize, you know what? I maybe haven't been looking at things the right way. I need to change my perspective a little. You bring a level of commitment that really challenges us. I mean, I used to think I worked hard until I met GMAP students, right? And your level of commitment is something that is just outstanding. And you do this on one of the steepest learning curves you could think about, because you come in, maybe you haven't been to university and studied for what, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And in 1 year, and most of that in the evenings and weekends, you get from there to where you are today. And that is a stunning achievement. It really is. So, first thing I've got to say to you is bask in the glory. Today is great. Enjoy it, right? If you're going to smile and smirk, do it today, because you have totally earned it. Right? And make sure your families do the same. They have got to congratulate you at least 3 times today, right? Because this is as good as it gets. Okay? So that's the first thing I think. And in doing this, in graduating from GMAP, you're joining actually quite a privileged club. Now, this isn't a sort of a Tufts and Fletcher self-congratulatory thing. It's privileged in the sense that you have been able to experience an education which has not been about cramming you with facts. It's been about pushing you to think, pushing you to look at things differently, pushing you to challenge your own ideas. It's incredibly liberating to be able to, maybe you don't think that now, but it really is liberating. It allows you to see the world differently, and I think that's a tremendous privilege, because it sets you up for the future that I want to talk about over the next few years. It gives you quite a responsibility, because you now have something you didn't have a year ago. You have a type of education, you have an ethos about what the purpose of education is. And the more I work in my field, the more I go back and read history. And I'm reading a lot of the history, the early sort of beginnings of science, and why people shifted from anecdote and superstition to science. And when you read it, it's almost all of it is about, I want to make the world better. That's why we shifted to science. That's why we shifted to saying evidence matters. And you're now part of that. That's a responsibility you take on. I'm afraid it's something you can't get rid of. Right? It's yours. You're going to have to do it. And you're doing this at a time that if I've been doing this 5 years ago, the work we do in our centre, right? We work in the humanitarian field, which means we work with disasters and mass atrocities and wars and all those great holiday destinations where probably the people in the back hope the people in the front never go. And it was terribly depressing. Our students would finish each year saying, we came in enthusiastic and we leave really feeling quite depressed after your lectures. Actually, I think it's changing. I am far more hopeful now about the future and about our world than I was 5 years ago. And I'll tell you why. One of the things we're now able to do, which we couldn't do 5 years ago, is much more sophisticated work with very, very large data sets. Not just data sets that cover the world, but data sets that go back in history. So we're actually able to say things about trends in human existence with more certainty than we could a few years ago. And so here are some of the things that we can say that are going to shape and that are shaping your world. The first, and for me I think the most profound, is that your chances, all of us in this room, of dying a violent death today, whether it's in war or it's in homicide, are far less than in any other century in human history. If we go back and look at the rate, the percentage of people who die from violent deaths, it has steadily gone down, and we have the data to show this. The world is a safer place. Even the 20th century, with its large wars, when you look at rates, in other words, the number of people dying per thousand, less people than in the previous century than in the previous century. So, it is a much safer world. The recourse to law and justice is increasing. A greater percentage of people in the world live in systems where the law matters, where you can actually have justice systems. The envelope that we describe as human rights is expanding. It's not just about female emancipation. Think about the rights of the child, and Khalid was referring to that. Think about the rights that the gay community is now starting to get. It's expanding and becoming more pervasive. These are good news stories. the percentage of countries, even when I came to Tufts a decade ago, in that decade, the number of countries classed as low-income countries has gone down by 2/5. I mean, that is stunning. These are huge changes in our world. Our news services, and we tend to focus on the gloom, right? And we tend to focus on the sort of the high news, which is usually the bad stuff. But these are the good news stories. Literacy rates. You look at a graph of literacy rates around the world over the last century, it's up. More people, greater percentage of people able to read. And one of the most phenomenal changes I think taking place now, which for me is the most exciting, is our ability to communicate from the smallest village in northern Darfur, where I do a lot of my field work, straight back here, whether it's via mobile phones or it's the apps with them or the internet. It is stunning. And I think we are only just glimpsing what that revolution is going to be. It's going to make the revolution of the printed press and the book look like nothing. The ability for people to have voice who previously had no voice, their ability to shape their communities, to no longer live in the dark where their suffering can't be seen. That, I think, is absolutely stunning. There's the dark side, though. And the dark side is that with these developments, those areas where things are not good stand out so much more. Those places where we still have mass atrocities and genocide, they stand out because they are so particular compared with the background. The places where human rights are still not recognized, the places where democracy, or at least government that cares about its people, doesn't exist. Those places stand out in stark contrast to the rest. But we have an opportunity, and you have an opportunity, I think, which is something that really hasn't happened much in the past. Do you remember the campaign to get rid of polio? Hallie, do you remember this, right? So polio is one of those diseases that, devastated mankind. Getting rid of 90% of the places in the world where polio existed and getting rid of 90% of that vaccine was relatively easy. The last 10% was difficult, the last 1% really difficult. And in some ways, I think we're entering a world that's structured the same way. Getting rid of those last instances of genocide, of mass atrocities, of governments that do not care about their people, they are going to be really sticky. They're going to be really, really difficult. But this is your opportunity. And for me, it really doesn't matter whether you are working in industry, you're working in the military, within an NGO, you're working in a government civil service. All of those areas are areas that are going to affect this and have an opportunity. You sort of have to make a choice. Am I going to do something about this or am I not? So I think for me, the main message coming out of today is you're on the brink of something that really could be profound. You have the skills coming out of GMAP. You have the opportunity, which we didn't have. The world was different 10 years ago. You didn't see the possibility that actually you could get rid of some of these heinous crimes and this suffering. You can do something to do that. If you're going to do it, I think we've got to think about the way we work, right? You've got to deal with the world as it is. We're actually not very good at this. Most of us deal with the world as we want it to be, right? You have this image in your head of how reality is, and you only see the things that match with your image, and you sort of discount the stuff that doesn't go along with your image of how you want the world. Don't do that. Deal with the reality, right? Because that's how you're going to get through. Look for evidence. Look for the causal models. Don't just go from the anecdotes. Don't just go from what everybody else is saying. Always say, does this make sense? Actually, do I have data to back up what I'm doing? Can I actually prove what I'm saying and change things? And understand that change is a fickle thing. How you change people, I used to think it was just about data. Originally I'm a sort of scientist, a geologist. Actually, I quite like being a geologist because rocks don't answer back. They just sort of sit there and they sit there for millions of years, and it takes a long time to change. But what I've learned by moving into a more political field is that change is driven partly by data, but it's also driven by personal experience. When people see things and experience it, they believe in it more. It's driven by personal interest, and there's nothing wrong with this. Getting a minister to realise he or she is going to get more votes if they put in place this policy, that's fine if it helps you get your policy. So don't shy away from the murky business of politics. Changing things in this world is really, really important, and you have the opportunity to do it. So as you go out into the world, right, with this great degree you've got, with these skills you've got, and this moment of opportunity where we have a world that is poised to be radically different from that of our generation, what's the advice you should take with you? So I decided I would poll some former GMAP students, right, and ask them, what should you do, right? What's the advice I should give, to your colleagues who are coming up? And I got a list and I have a few other sources, so I wanted to share some of this with you. So here's the first piece of advice from a GMAPper of a couple of years ago. I was having dinner with her in Washington a few days ago. You're going to bask in the glory today. And you know what's going to happen in about 2 or 3 weeks? You're going to feel really depressed. Because it's not all roses. It doesn't change overnight. So be warned, this is a reality check. After a few weeks, you're going to think, hang on a minute, I'm still doing the same job. I'm still getting up in the morning and going to work and coming back, and I've done all that GMAP, and it's like that deflation after you've won a race or something. Don't worry. Everybody goes through it. You're going to go through it. Everybody goes through it. But you're in this for the long run. You're not just in this for the short haul, right? You have years ahead to change things. Second piece of advice that people gave me to pass on. Understand that you're not an island. You need friends, you need mentors. The really smart people in this world seek out the people they can check ideas with, who can tell them when they're really being stupid and pushing their cause too far. Seek out those mentors, because you will need them. Your life is going to be stressful. That's the type of lives you've chosen, right? You've chosen a life of leadership. It's going to be stressful. Seek out those mentors who are going to be able to work with you and get you through this period. Smart people look for advice. And when you get that advice, it'll come as criticism sometimes. And some of it will be quite tough. And you know what you do when you get criticism? Always say thank you. All criticism is worthwhile. It helps you become a better person. It helps you understand what you're doing, and it helps you just check. Actually, there's a possibility I may be wrong. I may actually not have thought this through. And if you can take that on board and be able to admit when you make mistakes, it's wonderfully liberating. You don't have to defend every idea anymore. You can actually say, yeah, you know what? I goofed up. I didn't really think this through. Very liberating. That's from a GMAPper of about 6 or 7 years ago. I won't say who. Look for smart people. Most of you are going to be in positions where you hire people. So here's the advice. This piece of advice comes from the personnel manager of Procter & Gamble. And she said to me, always hire people who are smarter than you. Don't hire people who are like you. What's the symbolism of that? Always hire people who are smarter than you, because they will help you move forward. And the final piece of advice I want to share with you, it's a 1-minute story, so I have to tell you this. So, about 13 years ago, I was sitting in the first class cabin of a Lufthansa aircraft with 3 other people. 2 of them were Michael Jackson's children, and 1 of them was Michael Jackson. It's a long, long story. We won't go into all of it, but effectively it was a big concert. It was going to raise money for the Red Cross, and I was working for the Red Cross. And we were flying down from Frankfurt to Cape Town. And we were going to do a big press event in Cape Town. This was going to raise money for the Red Cross and the Nelson Mandela Foundation. And it was bizarre, totally surreal event. And we do the press conference with Michael Jackson, and it's very strange. And then we go off, just him and me, which I didn't know was going to happen, to see Nelson Mandela. And this was one of the most I was going to say, humbling and inspiring experiences of my life. I was sitting in the room, waiting for Nelson to come in, and it was in his house in Cape Town. And the doors were open behind me, and I felt this enveloping warmth. And Nelson had just walked in. And I'm not a superstitious sort of guy, and it was the most humbling and exciting experience at the same time. This sense of charisma enveloping you. And we chatted for about half an hour. Lots of things, but actually we chatted most of the time about children and bringing up children, and about living life with a lot of stress. So this is the piece of advice that Nelson Mandela gave me and Michael Jackson that day, and I pass on to you. And he said, life is stressful. There are things, you're going to have dark times. The one thing that kept him going is having beauty in your life. Keep something of beauty in your life, whether it's art, whether it's your love of countryside, your love of music. It really matters. You are social animals. You are people with feelings. So study hard, work hard, lead, follow, or get out of the way, but keep something of beauty in your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. So, now we're at what I would call the heart of our ceremony, our commencement speaker, Mark Mullinex. We're very, very privileged to have him as our commencement speaker. Only 2 years ago did he sit as you're sitting now and attend the commencement ceremony of GMAP. I mentioned that he attended because he did have one more thing to do. He had to finish his French, but he has done that. He did that last year, so he's in 2 classes. But all joking aside, one of the most brilliant people to go through GMAP. He's now, only 2 years later, first vice president and chief operating officer at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. There, he has responsibility for the bank's financial services, information technology, financial management, corporate support services, and the Fed's community outreach. The Richmond Fed serves the 5th Federal Reserve District, which includes the District of Columbia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and most of West Virginia, and its offices are in Richmond, Baltimore, and Charlotte. I should mention he's an heir, of course, of Woodrow Wilson then, isn't he? Because it was Woodrow Wilson, whom we studied in the leadership class, who set up the Federal Reserve. Prior to joining the Richmond Fed, while he was a GMAPper, Mark served as Executive Vice President and Product Manager of the Federal Reserve's cash services at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. While there, he was responsible for formulating policies and business and technology strategies to meet global demand for U.S. currency and coin that today surpasses $1 trillion in circulation. And of course, he began his Fed career with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City in 1986, where he is from. He began his professional career as a Marine Corps infantry commander, and he served 8 years as a regular officer on active duty before joining the Fed. He continued his service in the Marine Corps Reserve and retired at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. During his career, Mark has been a passionate community advocate, serving on the boards of the Los Angeles and Oklahoma City United Way organizations, the Junior Achievement of Southern California, and the Arizona Council on Economic Education. He has also been engaged with the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, Women's Unlimited of San Francisco, and Claremont Graduate University's Thomas Rivera Policy Institute. He currently serves on the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Richmond and is a member of the Capital Region Collaborative Organizing Council. He has a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of Kansas and, of course, the wonderful, wonderful degree of the Global Master of Arts. He's also a graduate at the University of Wisconsin's Graduate School of Banking. So thank you, Mark, for coming and joining us today.
Dean Nutter, members of the faculty, I think one overseer and one trustee. If there are others out there, raise your hand. We'll pass the collection plate if you're out there. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You know, it's with much pride that I return to Medford and this great university to participate in this ceremony. I've heard that the tradition has been properly observed in that the cannon was painted, perhaps repainted, if those pesky freshmen were at their work. Nicely done, class. Well, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the institution I've served for more than 2 decades, the Federal Reserve. Commemorative milestones are important. They offer the opportunity to reflect on the lessons of our past, and in the Fed's case, to deepen our understanding of our central bank's evolving role in promoting economic growth, stability, and in so doing, inspire trust and confidence for the future. As for today's important milestone, I am at once thrilled, yet humbled, to be with you today, this 80th year of the Fletcher School, and as Deborah said, the 22nd commencement exercises for its Global Master of Arts program. Now, we should all be grateful that Austin Fletcher's financial gift to Tufts brought life to his vision of producing graduates who are committed to maintaining the stability and prosperity of a complex, challenging, and increasingly global world. If here today, I'm certain that Mr. Fletcher would be immensely pleased with the vast array of talents assembled in and the global composition of your class. I heartily commend all of you graduating today. Your studies these past months likely have served to expand your understanding of several of the significant challenges of our times. In these months, you have examined complex issues associated with economic growth and global integration, the severe problems arising from environmental degradation, urbanization, and destabilizing conflict, and the challenges associated with promoting and achieving sustainable development in a meaningful way in the near term. Work on these and other issues will, I hope, excite the passions and summon the talents of many of you under this big top tent. I do not, however, stand here today to offer my personal views regarding the priorities or approaches to be taken to address these significant issues. Rather, I wish to point out to you that the GMAP experience brings with it a blessing, and that is in addition to those you have already experienced. Those blessings have come in the form of your interactions with the Fletcher School's exceptional scholars and the GMAP team. And lest you forget those cupcake breaks with Dean Nutter. The additional blessing I refer to has been your opportunity to both renew and refresh intellectually, and to reflect on GMAP, your professional experiences to date, and how they have collectively prepared you as you look forward to, and this is what studies have shown to be, the most productive years of your professional lives. Yes, they lie ahead. So, I urge each of you to consider in the days ahead, what will be your cause? What will be the best and wisest application of your talents and strengths? And how will your efforts serve to make your corner of the world a better place. So it's now time, as my sons would say, Dad, keep it real. So in the spirit of keeping it real and bringing it back to the practical realm, here are several ideas for you to think about. I offer them as words of encouragement, though they may seem like advice. And I've gotten them from lessons learned through experience and the tremendously good fortune I've enjoyed of having been exposed to bright, candid, and committed mentors and colleagues throughout my life and career. So first, it's not about you. That's right, it's not about you. We're celebrating you, but it's not about you. There's an African word, Ubuntu. It means many things to many people. Nelson Mandela described it as this: I am what I am because of you. We cannot be without each other. At its root, Ubuntu is a very profound kindness. It is an expectation that we encourage, we support, and we help each other, that we serve. How each of us has served and will serve will be different. For some in this class, it may be running a company or an NGO. For others, it may be serving in a government ministry, development bank, or performing humanitarian field work. For still others, it may be in community development, charitable foundations, or teaching the next generation of leaders. But the outcome is always the same. Through service, we enrich the life of others, and in so doing, our own. Second, find your voice. And once you found it, make it heard. Do your homework. Peter gave some great examples there. But do your homework. Then strive for impact and influence. Your voice may advance new ideas or a better understanding of complex issues. Your voice may speak out to show the way forward where ideas or progress has stalled. Your voice may even speak out to right wrongs, such as my classmate, Dalia Zayeda, has done in her home country of Egypt. One voice, your voice, can make a difference. Find it. Third, lead from where you are. Think about this. Leadership is about behavior. It's not a title. And leaders don't always emerge from where we might expect. In fact, some of the most influential leaders in history have emerged from humble or even hopeless beginnings. American civil rights pioneer Rosa Parks from her seat on a bus. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama from a small farm in Tibet. Mother Teresa from the poverty-stricken neighborhoods of Calcutta. When faced with difficulty and perhaps dark or even desperate situations, remember, Mother Teresa's words urge us to create, even though our years of work can be destroyed overnight. She counseled us to do good, even though it may be forgotten. And she inspired us to give our very best, even though in some circumstances it will never be enough. Lead from where you are. Fourth, get on with it. Get on with it. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, while president, was asked, "What advice do you have for someone who desires to become a great statesman?" Or in this case, an expert in international affairs. His simple reply, begin. Think about it. Begin. commencement. For centuries, these words have been linked to days such as today. Days that offer the promise for new beginnings, grand adventure, and aspiration for doing right and good. So begin. And finally, I did make the point that while it's not about you, remember that, it is entirely up to you. Embrace and leverage the richness of the GMAP experience. The research, the writing, and most of all, these wonderful relationships you have begun are now an important part of you as you are about to become permanent citizens of Fletcher's GMAP community. I can assure you this, that it's not what you take from GMAP and your experience that will benefit you the most. It is what you will make of it that truly counts. And that is indeed up to you. So be sure to take heart, remain confident, and be resilient in your life's labors. And may each of you do your very best to bring about peace and light to our world. Go well, GMAPers. Go well.
There are all sorts of surprises behind this podium, you will see. So we have a few beautifully wrapped gifts.
Not cupcakes.
Not cupcakes, but they're the same color. Adeline is our great wrapper.
Beautiful.
And of course, you've seen the color. Thank
Beautiful.
you so much for this. Thank you so much for coming and being with us. And it makes me feel inspired. This graduation always does that, and those words in particular just did it for me. And I'm sure they did it for all of you as well. So, now's the moment. Come on up, Mariana. She is going to read your names, and we're going to give you, well, not quite your degrees, because your degrees have to be voted by not only the faculty of the Fletcher School in the fall, but they have to be approved by our dean, who has just joined us, the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, Jim Stavridis. And then it will go to the provost, who sits in this building. And then finally they will be voted on in September by the Tufts Board of Trustees. These degrees are not given out easily by this university. You've truly earned them. So what's in these envelopes are certificates that explain that you've completed them, completed the degree, and they can be used in the interim between now and that day in early September. So Mariana, if you'll give out the degree, I hope Mark will join me. I mean, you'll call the name. Mark will join me in giving the degree, and then each of you should go down and shake the hand of your faculty and other distinguished guests.
And we will begin with Ulvi Alcondo. Bassam Albin Mohammed. Alessandro Argialas. Robert Avetisian. James Bowler. Gillian M.S. Bristol. Andrew David Bonnell. Juan Carrizosa. Trevor DeWitt. Jeffrey Fang. Irasima Infante. Janelle Joseph. Julaine Kassam. Adrian Gonzalez Lagrama. Sarah Ann Lange. Michael Lopez. Ernesto Malda. Khaled Mansour. Irene Mbari Kirika. Olinga Biwale Joseph. Alexandra Pribilovics. Monica Smith. Luis Viguria Chavez. Jerry Winata. Christina Yates. Gerta Zebo. And last but not least, Bernard Zongo.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So we've now come to the conclusion of our ceremony. What we're going to do is, as soon as the music begins, we're going to allow the platform party to exit first, and I would then ask you to wait until the class exits, and then the class is going to gather for a photo in front of Packard Hall, which is over here. And then I invite everyone to join the class for a wonderful brunch is set up, I think, and mimosas and Bloody Marys and other things, I think, are waiting. Just one more thing. As I always say, I get you first and I get you last. At our first residency, our motto was Churchillian. It was never, never, never give up. And indeed, you're here today. You did not give up. At the mid-year residency, it was Elizabethan. It was revise, revise, revise. When you came here just 2 weeks ago for your final residency, someone said it was never, never, never again. Nicole told you it was back up, back up, back up, so you didn't lose your thesis. And I told you there was one more to come. One more to come. Now, of course, we want you to be leaders, and we want you to do great things. But we know that the temptations of leadership and power are enormous. We know they are hubris, corruption, selfish enjoyment of luxury, the illegal accumulation of wealth for the leader and his family and friends, the abuse of power, in many cases, doing evil to other people. These are large and dangerous. We know from our foreign policy leadership course and from what we read in the newspapers and hear in the news that these things still exist and go on. So I want you to remember that goodness is an essential part of greatness. As Mandela has taught us, and I think it's been put in the words best by Peter Gomes, the legendary minister at Harvard's Memorial Church, without goodness, there can be no greatness. So congratulations, and now let's enjoy ourselves.